22 years of narcotics enforcement that I did, overseeing and participating in literally thousands of investigations, narcotics investigations right in our own state. There was a good period of time or occasions where, the girls that we came in contact with were sex trafficked. There was no doubt about it. Sometimes I was able to, in interviews, be able to get the girls to admit it and explain what happened to them. A lot of times it was very silent, but it was understood what was happening. These girls were getting addicted. They were being used as sex tools for exchange for drugs or money, prostituted out, some very young, very, very sad stories. And that's always stayed with me.
Welcome back to Hawaii Real, everybody. I'm your host, Io Keehu. And before I start anything, I want to send a shout out to Hawaiian Springs Water, a beverage host for this episode. You can go ahead and buy Hawaiian Springs water from the Amazon link in the description below. You don't even have to leave your house to get this beautiful, awesome tasting alkaline water that's bottled straight from the Big Island of Hawaii and sent out all over the world. Again, hit that up at the Amazon link in the description below. And today I have a great guest that I met. A former HPD officer, former narcotics officer, former state agent, and then he started working for security at hospitals, a Casa Hospital, and all over the place. And you've built your own brand. But I have with me Ed Howard, President, CEO, owner of Pax Bello Security Solutions Hawaii. Ed, thank you so much for coming on.
Appreciate it. Thank you for being here.
It's an honor. It's an honor to meet you, and it's an honor to really, when we were talking, before we started rolling, all the things that you're involved in, and I just found out that you're involved in this Ola
Napua.
Ola Napua. Hawaiian boy, I can't even say it. Ola Napua, which we're going to talk about later on in the episode. But first, I wanted to kind of get the audience to know Ed Howard. You can find him. He's been on a couple of Think Tech episodes. Your website, paxbello.com.
Yeah, paxbellohawaii.com.
paxbellohawaii.com. I also want to talk about the name because that's so cool. But first of all, local boy, not really.
48 years.
48 years, but we were talking before, you're a military brat like myself also.
Air Force, yeah.
Air Force brat?
Yeah.
So where did you guys live growing up? What kind of places?
Japan, Korea, Germany, West Coast, East Coast. Hawaii was my dad's last duty station at Hickam before he retired. I believe I was in, I want to say 6th or 7th grade when I arrived, and I haven't left ever since. So it's been about 48 years since I've.
So if you lived in Hickam, did you graduate from Radford?
I actually went to IAEA.
IAEA?
Yeah. Interesting. Back in those days, my older brother was a super baseball player. So they recruited him to IAEA. The deal was I had to go to IAEA as well.
What's the age difference?
2 years.
He's older?
Yes. Older. Yeah.
Very cool.
Yeah.
So you got that district exception.
I don't know how it worked, but I ended up at IAEA.
Hey, was Radford that bad back in the day?
No, they weren't a baseball powerhouse. My brother played, for those who remember Derek Tatsuno days, Gerald Ako days. Those were the days when IAEA was a real powerhouse in baseball, and he was kind of right up there with everyone. So that's how he ended up there.
Makes sense.
Yeah.
So you weren't a powerhouse baseball player?
I was just your average athlete.
What was your sport?
Baseball and football. I had a few glory moments, and I also rode the bench too. So,
Didn't we all? Yeah, I was not the star athlete in football or anything like that.
Right.
Played football for 7th grade through 10th grade. And then all the boys were getting bigger and bigger, and I wasn't.
Right. Same here.
Yeah. So it's like, nope, I'm done with football. Sorry.
Right.
Okay. So IAEA, but that kind of covers what neighborhood you're from. So did you guys stay on Hickam as you went to IAEA, or did you guys move to a local neighborhood also? Yeah.
Well, I actually went to Mokulele Elementary School on Hickam. And then after that, I went to Aleomano Intermediate. And then from there, you're supposed to feed into Radford. But I got diverted to IAEA which, by the way, IA is the best school. So I
What's your guys' mascot again? What's the mascot?
Na'ali'i Oea, the Ali'is.
Okay.
So yeah, so I had great high school experience. One of the reasons why I really liked IA was the diversity, right? So we had the Samoans and Tongans at Halawa Housing, right? We had the kind of upper middle class Japanese Aya Heights. We had kind of the lower middle class people up Halawa Heights, right? And then we had the military people from Pearl Harbor. If they didn't go to Radford, we did get some that lived in Pearl Ridge, and that. So we had a real good diversity of people, and I had a lot of good diversity of friends. So some of my best friends were from Halawa Housing. We had some really, really good times.
Interesting. It's kind of like I went to Moanalua for a couple of years, intermediate, and same thing. You had local kids from where were they from? Salt Lake area, I guess. And then you had all the military families, Fort Shafter, AMR,
right.
And then you had the affluent Japanese neighborhoods in Moanalua, and they were all kind of converging on this one high school. So, yeah, I got a lot of different aspects and cultures right in one school.
Exactly. Yeah, that's what makes Hawaii, pretty special too, right?
But you know what? All those kids, I remember back in middle school, man, we all split up in our own little groups and cliques, and it was by what area you were from and your ethnicity. They just naturally broke up into those groups.
Right.
There wasn't a whole lot of intermingling between those groups.
All right.
It was locals versus howlies or rockers versus rappers. It was just stupid stuff back then, man.
Yeah.
But what area do you live now, or what do you call home?
I'm still in that area over by the stadium, Aloha Stadium. So I'm kind of never really left that area. Just kind of always really liked that area. Yeah.
Where did you guys live on Hickam?
Oh God, they used to call it
because I lived there for a year.
Area 20. I'm trying to remember what they had an area name for it, a number. Those housings aren't there anymore. But yeah, it was a nice area. It was across from what used to be the Ninth Puka golf course, and then next to it was the airfield or the runways, part of the runways.
Was that all the way down at the end?
When you come through the main gate, you'll make a left and you go all the way down. Yeah, so it was all those housing areas on the left side there.
Oh, okay. Yeah, we lived on Fort Kamehameha for a couple of years.
Fort Cam. Oh,
yeah.
We used to, when I was in the Boy Scouts, that's a lot of camping in that area.
Yeah, right.
Yeah. Right. I remember the Golden Acre club down the road where people would do their boating and, Hickam Harbor.
It was down there.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah,
we could just ride our bikes to the beach.
Yeah.
In fact, our house was on the beach, but you couldn't actually swim in that beach because we were right next to the wastewater treatment plant.
Right.
So I was like, no, don't go in that water.
But beautiful area.
Totally beautiful.
Homes. Yeah.
But the thing I remember about that house was the yard was massive. Over an acre. Like for Hawaii standards, right? It's well over an acre, but I had to mow the lawn. I was like 7th grade.
Earn your keep there. Earn your
keep. Yeah. A little 8th grader mowing this huge lawn with a push mower.
Yeah.
And it was like the really thick crabgrass.
Right.
Horrible. I'd spend like all day and get halfway done. All right. Well, let's get more into you. What's your favorite food here at restaurant?
I'm a pretty simple guy, so I'm a big city diner fan. Actually, I meet a lot of my clients in Pearl Ridge Big City Diner.
Wow.
They know me very well, and decent local food, right?
Mama's fried rice.
Yeah, all that good stuff, right? Yeah, wasabi cucumber hamburger.
Is Big City Diner a nationwide? Is it like a chain nationwide, or is it?
I think it's just a local chain.
It is, because you go there and they have a lot of local quote unquote food.
Yeah.
Yeah, cool.
So I'm a simpleton when it comes to that kind of stuff. Good food, good quantity, decent prices, right?
Yep. Good service, hopefully.
Good service.
Yeah. All right. So if you could immediately learn one brand new professional skill, what would it be? Like just immediately you had it.
You ready for this?
Mm-hmm.
Grant writing.
Oh, frick.
Grant writing. It's a real technical writing.
It's one of those,
right.
if you know, you know.
Yes, and if you're really good at it, you can do wonderful things because there's so many grants out there, a lot of money that's just sitting out there. If you could really master that, yeah. If I could have learned that, I mean, I'm a pretty good writer, but that's a whole different level.
I mean, you could just hire someone to do only grant writing for some of these organizations.
Oh yeah, yeah, absolutely.
Well, because you have to manage the grant afterwards.
Right. But getting through the application processes and all the things that you have to justify and just write in a way that is going to win you that grant. If I had that, I'd be better.
Yeah, you'd be a lot happier, less stress.
Yeah.
Probably have a lot less gray going on. Because grants could just take care of so much stuff. I don't think the public really realizes what goes into.
Yeah, like a good example is if the Biden infrastructure thing. Well, it's going to happen, right? When that happens, I mean, there's going to be grants galore. A lot of that money is going to come through grants, and that's something I'm already looking at. Doing as part of my business and as part of services. So, yeah,
that's a great answer.
Yeah, you got to look ahead.
Grant writing,
for sure.
For all you audience out there, grant writing, don't shy away from that, because that's.
Yeah,
I only know one person in the department that really is really good at grant writing and holding down the grants.
Yeah,
maybe two people.
Yeah. I think you call them technical writers because that's what they are. They're really technical in what they can do, and their abilities to flow through it, and it's a gift.
There's so many nuances inside grants too, of explaining what you're going to do and how you're going to measure your success and everything, right?
Yep.
So
absolutely,
definitely take some afterthought, some experience too. I think.
Yeah.
It's not like natural writing. They don't teach that in college or English class or anything like that. That'd be a great college course. They probably have that somewhere. They have to have that somewhere.
Probably, yeah.
I mean, they have stupid classes like history of rock and roll when I was in college.
Yeah,
that's a great class. What else we got here? Okay, historical figures. I always ask this question: one historical figure that you would like to have lunch with, and where are you taking them? Probably Big City Diner.
Of course. No.
All right.
That's an interesting question because there's so many out there. I think for me, because I'm kind of a World War II buff, not super deep into it, but my great uncle, in World War II was landed in Normandy and went through the whole D-Day thing. Really admired the stories that he told me personally and what I heard from my dad as well. So it'd probably be Dwight Eisenhower. I would like to just try to see if I could pick his brain about how that whole planning went down, and how they were gonna, address that invasion.
The invasion.
The invasion.
So here's a follow-up question to that. Would you want to talk to him immediately after the invasion, during the planning stages of the invasion, or as president of the United States?
Planning stages.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah. Because that took a couple years probably or longer, or certainly over a year to plan that. The vision that it took, the strategic considerations, all of that stuff. Yeah, I just think it's fascinating. My bucket list is one day to be able to go to Normandy and see that,
Yeah, no, that's on my bucket list too, to be able to, at least, myself and probably my boys to go out there and visit the site out there.
Yeah.
You can watch Saving Private Ryan, but it doesn't do justice. You got to go out there and really really feel it and see the sand, and see what these men had to do.
Yeah.
My grandfather was in the airborne, jumped in Normandy.
Mm-hmm.
So we still have his jacket, his tunic.
Yeah,
it's funny because it doesn't fit. It doesn't even fit my younger son. It's like, wow, Greg, your great grandfather was a tiny, tiny man. But yeah, that's really amazing. Yeah, just the sheer amount of planning and risk that they had to take. You know, that's why they call them the greatest generation.
Exactly. Yeah.
You know, they have those TV shows, you know, Band of Brothers and stuff. It's just, I put this out there to all, you know, my American audience. If you haven't seen Band of Brothers, like that's definitely an HBO show to go see and really not forget where our American history has brought us, you know, as far as this world and what people had to do and sacrificed for the freedoms that we have and share and take for granted today, you know.
Right. So,
yeah, great answer. Dwight D. Eisenhower.
Yep.
Okay, so I know you saw this question before, but on
these icebreaker questions, right?
Yeah. So security related, because you know, Pax Bello. And I know you've probably thought about this question, like after watching maybe, you know, The Walking Dead or something like that. It's like, in a zombie apocalypse, as a security person yourself, where would you go strategically and how would you set up your lifestyle?
Wow. Good question.
You know, because I see those shows and I'm like, those people are stupid. I know you probably did the same thing too. It's like, why would they do that? Those idiots. Right. Why don't they do this?
Well, if you look at it on a security perspective, right, the zombies are the risk and the vulnerability, right? And, you know, if you don't mitigate it and you don't deal with it, then, you know, you're probably going to get eaten and die, right? So I don't know. I think a real kind of fortress type of situation where there's a lot of offset, there's a lot of different layers of security is what we call, and kind of plan for it that way. So every layer, they got to either penetrate or, you know, you can stop them perhaps, right? All the way up to a very fortified structure. Probably look at something like that.
Where would you go? So if you're here on Oahu, zombie apocalypse, what kind of, just looking around you, like, okay, we're in Kalihi, like, where would you go? Where would you?
I think you got to go up.
Mountains?
Yeah, mountains or higher level. Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, I was thinking like H3 tunnel.
That would be good.
Yeah,
or Diamond Head is another good one.
Diamond Head, you could shut off the tunnel, but then you have zombies climbing up the sides of Diamond Head, right? So you have to man like the heights and everything like that. Yeah, but that'd be pretty easy because that's pretty tough. That's a pretty tough climb.
Right.
But then how do you get food and stuff into Diamond Head? Yeah, these are the dumb things that I think about, man.
You're catching me off guard, that's for sure. So,
but it takes a true professional who has like been through law enforcement and stuff like that, and you watch these shows and it's like, why are they dumb? Like,
right. Yeah, I mean, you say that to yourself quite a bit when you're watching these things, right? Yeah, interesting.
I definitely do.
Well, we have different perspectives, right? We have different mindsets coming from security and law enforcement. We think differently for sure. So, yeah.
I think one of my things for the zombie apocalypse is I would try to go to Alakava, Home Depot, Sam's Club, Best Buy. They're all right there with Lowe's right there. Mm-hmm. Set up a fortress around there with all the tools, food, shut that place down, secure that area. That's a hub. It's right next to the ocean too.
Yeah. Well,
boom, right there.
I see that you dwell on this quite a bit.
Yeah, a few showers taken. I thought about this. All right, so moving on. If you were a superhero or a villain, what superpowers would you have?
It's got to be just the extreme strength. You know, you can pick up anything and move anything. You can throw anything. I kind of something like that. You know, I don't know if I can really like the Incredible Hulk. Mm-hmm. You know, that's kind of. I loved that show growing up. Arnold Schwarzenegger was my hero as far as bodybuilding, weightlifting. I was a power lifter, you know, so I kind of saw all that stuff, right? Gave me a lot of confidence, which I was lacking pretty early on in my life. So, yeah.
What do you think was one of the anchors that made you lose self-confidence or not have the self-confidence and pushed you towards bodybuilding?
Getting my lunch quarter stolen every day from school in the boys' bathroom. Hey, bro, I like your quarter. You know, that kind of stuff.
Yeah, I like quarter.
Back then, the lunches were a quarter, right?
Yeah, I think when I went to school, it was still a quarter too. Maybe two.
Yeah.
Or dime. to catch the bus home,
Right.
the school bus.
Right.
He
I
would
mean, you
steal your
come to a
dime.
realization sooner or later that you got to stand up for yourself, right? You got to, yeah, you got to protect yourself. You can't always give up, right? You can't. So,
Or you can't always rely on someone else to protect you.
well, that's true. And
Right.
my older brother had nothing to do with that. It was almost like he didn't know me in high school.
Oh,
Yeah, I was on
man.
my own, man. So, yeah, that kind of led to it. I was a pretty scrawny person, you know, in freshman year. Small guy, I'm short, you know, didn't have the luxury of height. So, yeah, I came back like my sophomore year, like 40 pounds heavier and muscle and bigger, and almost got immediate respect, you know. So that
Yeah,
kind of helped me out. Yeah. Yeah.
Do you think that led you into the realm of law enforcement? Like, did you want to go into law enforcement and security from when you graduated high school? Like,
You
was
know,
that your
that's
goal?
a really good question. I've been asked that often, and I have to be honest and say that, you know, my older brother was so good in sports that, you know, he's looked at being drafted Major League Baseball, and he just went down the wrong trail. I mean, alcohol and drugs,
Oh,
and that really motivated me to wanting, like, I knew I wanted to go into law enforcement 10th grade, 10th, 11th grade. I already knew that's what my calling was and what I wanted to do. So, and that kind of spearheaded it because I saw he broke my dad's heart and saw that he really had a really, really good opportunity, and he just couldn't comprehend that, what his, you know, what his future could be like, right? And then he just, you know, the friends, the drugs, the alcohol, you know, it's kind of a waste. So I saw that, and it kind of motivated me to, like, I want to clean up the world from drugs, which is what I ended up kind of doing.
yeah, going
you know,
into
down the road.
narcotics.
Yeah, yeah. So kind of just all came together like that. But I knew very early on what I wanted to do. Yeah.
That's that. Yeah, no, that's really inspiring. That and kind of using a negative outcome of what happened with your brother to push you into a positive direction.
Right. And I knew going into the police department that sooner or later my goal was to get into narcotics enforcement and investigations, and it so happened I was very fortunate to be able to walk that path. So, yeah.
Yeah,
That's good.
It's unfortunate that happened, but at the same time, society is fortunate to have people like you that have that kind of motivation and do this kind of work, because that work needs to get done, and
Yeah.
it's not a job that anybody can do.
No, absolutely not. I mean, I dedicated quite a few years to it, and you know, the war on drugs, as people say, it's a losing battle, and maybe it is, but every time we did something, it was gratifying, and we knew that in our own hearts, right, that we were making some difference in some way. So for our communities and our state and so on.
Yeah. Well, that kind of transfers into my next question. So, as a professional throughout your career or all your careers, what was your favorite or most impactful memory?
That's a really good question. I think the best way for me to answer that is every job that I've had, with the exception of the police department, was I always came in and built things from the scratch. You know, whether it was a security force, whether it was a law enforcement task force, always built from scratch. Meaning, like, you know, we're starting from the beginning and we're going to build something really good. And over the years, always had, like, whatever we touched turned to gold, right? But it was because we built everything from scratch, and that's been the most gratifying, and not only in law enforcement, but in my private sector career as well. Like, built good security teams, all the way into the whole corporate security world, you know. So that, to me, that's been the most gratifying, is being able to build things, make it sustainable, and you know, have a really good product.
So, were you in charge of most of these things that they're building from scratch?
Yeah, always. I was always in some leadership role with that, and had a hand in being able to, to bring that together with the team members.
That is really impressive. How many projects or things do you think, just rough estimate, that you started from scratch and was able to bring to fruition?
For sure 3. And they were at the various points of my career, where I worked. I worked in locations for long periods of time, so 10 years, 16 years, 10 years.
Some of these projects take years and years and years.
Yeah. So I was fortunate enough to be able to have the support to be able to do it. And, we're talking everything from hiring the right people to policies and procedures and, all that kind of stuff. That's
writing
really
MOPs and stuff.
Yeah. Right. So
all the way to writing grants to make sure that there's a future for it and everything.
Right. So that's been satisfactory for me.
Are some of those programs still running?
Yeah, they are. Sure. Yeah, and that's even more gratifying, right? Something that you built and is still there and still going.
And you see people today that's just their job, and they don't realize that
history. Right?
I'm the dude that wrote all the stuff that you're doing. Like,
right.
I had my hand in that. We messed up, and we built through it.
Right. Yeah, so very, very gratifying.
Do you have any big failures that you learned from?
Yeah, without getting into real specifics, I mean, it's hard sometimes to work for the government, right? Accountability, efficiencies aren't always there. So sometimes it got to a point where, it was hard to accept certain things, and it was hard to accept that you couldn't change things. I wouldn't really necessarily call them failures, but they're setbacks from time to time. Yeah,
that's a good way to look at it.
Yeah.
They're not really failures; it's just setbacks.
Yeah,
setbacks are always temporary.
Right.
Yeah,
absolutely. Yeah.
So let's get into your security solutions, Pax Bello. Where does the name come from? Is it beautiful peace?
Pax Bello is actually a name from a really, really good friend and professional associate of mine. It's his family's crest.
Okay.
It's the Osborne family. And he's based in San Diego. Really, really great guy. I actually, because of my partnership with him and my relationship with him, I just really asked him if I could use it because I liked it. I thought it was cool. Doing some research on it, there's different definitions of it. It's kind of, one of them would be called a peaceful warrior. It's kind of centered on a warrior, but someone that's got their head on really good and they're preparing.
So the Bello part is warrior or fighter.
Yeah, Pax. Yeah. Haven't defined it to a T, but through the research that I've done and what my partner has told me is, it kind of surrounds that kind of mentality. So yeah, you're a warrior, but you know how to be peaceful and you know how to prepare and you know how to, that kind of thing. So
it's like be ready for war, but don't necessarily have to be fighting. What was the adage? I'd rather be a warrior in a garden than a gardener in a war.
Yeah, something like that. Yeah, because you don't always have to have the warrior mentality, right? You can have kind of that guardian mentality at the same time, but you just be ready. You just be ready to be that warrior if you need to be. So you can have that attitude through peace and to keep peace, right? But just you got to just be prepared for it. So it's been a great. It's always a question that's asked of me. So thank you for asking.
So when people ask you, what does it mean? You just what do you off the cuff tell them it means?
I just say it's a family crest, and it kind of means this peaceful warrior type of thing. Yeah. So you got the long version.
So it's the Latin samurai. That's what it is.
Yeah.
How's that Hawaiian Springs water they're doing for you?
Very good. Very good.
It's alkaline water.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's good stuff. I always say that, but it's really, really good. So we were talking about the warrior mentality, not just in the name of your company, but that's also kind of a lifestyle motto, ethos that you have, that you bring into. I think you've lived it throughout. You know, you talked about being bullied as a kid, and so you did something about it, and you've turned yourself into this. I mean, for a better word, I mean, warrior, I think is the appropriate word to use in that instance. But you're also bringing this into what is now your passion project of helping combat child sex trafficking. And you were telling me off camera a little bit that it was, you know, you felt more of a protective role in that. I was like, yes, but you can't be a protector unless you're willing to fight and be that badass monster, because you might need that, whether it's in the boardroom, whether it's writing grants, or whether it's physically fighting someone. You need to have that competitive, hard mentality.
No, absolutely. And so you can use, you know, the warrior mentality in different ways, as you just explained. But, you know, when you have a passion for something and you want to help, or you want to educate people, right, to make them better, and to, like, in my sense of security, is that you want to help them to be able to protect themselves. You want to help them. You want to help people to be able to prepare. That's really what my company is all about. It's education. It's preparing. You know, it's taking matters in your own hand as far as being responsible for, you know, your property, your business, your organization, right? As far as the sex trafficking thing goes with Ola Napua, the reason why I'm passionate about that is, you know, in the 22 years of narcotics enforcement that I did, overseeing and participating in literally thousands of investigations, narcotics investigations, right in our own state, there was a good period of time or occasions where, you know, the girls that we came in contact with were sex trafficked. There was no doubt about it. Sometimes I was able to, in interviews, be able to get the girls to admit it and explain what happened to them. A lot of times it was very silent, but it was understood what was happening. You know, these girls were getting addicted. They were being used as sex tools for exchange for drugs or money, prostituted out, some very young, very, very sad stories. And that's always stayed with me as a part of the investigations I was involved with, seeing that aspect of it. It's all part of that world, yeah. So that's one of the passions that I have is, you know, we need to help this. It's a very vulnerable population, and some of the lives are being ruined or have been ruined, and we need to bring them back to a point where they can function and they can have, you know, a good life. So that's one of the reasons why I'm passionate about that. But that is a form of being protective, right, over that.
Mm-hmm.
So
what are the types of things that you're looking to get people knowledge about or learned about so that they do protect themselves, especially locally here?
Yeah. So, you know, I think, you know, as each year goes by, you know, the world is changing a lot. Things are becoming more dangerous. Things are becoming more to a point where you have to be aware of your safety and your employees, if you have a business, and your property. And security is just a really big aspect of what's happening in today's world, especially where, you know, you cannot really rely on the police or police intervention and response like we used to be able to do. So you're going to have to take ownership a little bit more. And ownership means taking ownership of the security of your, you know, your assets. We call them assets, right? So protection of assets really means you need to have plans and measures and processes in place so you can protect your assets. Your assets are people, equipment, supplies, even information. that's all important to you, whether it's your own personal household or whether it's a multi-million-dollar company that you're running. So one of the things that I've discovered as a consultant is that there's a real lack of education out there. There's big gaps to what people understand or don't understand. And one of the big things that always comes up is, well, we call 911. Well, yeah, you do call 911. There's a point in time when you absolutely have to do that. And the police are part of maybe managing what you need to manage. But what have you done up to that point?
Mm-hmm.
What have you done to protect yourself, to protect your assets? So that's really where my passion is too, is to educate businesses, organizations, even individuals, and get them to understand the real world security.
Yeah, I mean, we have a big homeless population now. It's kind of it's getting out of hand, some people would say. They're kind of, in some places, invading some of these businesses. And
well, it's funny you say that.
Outside.
Yeah, it's funny you say that, because that's my top 3 inquiries and calls that I get.
Like, how do we take care of the homeless person that's always asleep outside my office?
Yeah. And, I call 911 and they come and they don't do anything, it's that kind. So then I start throwing questions out to them. And next thing you know, it's like, the foundation for every problem is an assessment, right? So I always bring up the fact, have you done a security assessment? Have you really truly identified what your risks and your vulnerabilities are? And have you truly addressed those kind of things to see maybe why is it that homeless gravitates to your area, your property? What's really going on in the community and the environment. So when I start talking in that sense, they're like, oh yeah, maybe we should do an assessment. Maybe we should look at what's really the cause or the root of the problems, right? So it's things like that when I start talking to people as a consultant to educate them, then they start to see a bigger picture, right? Rather than the police don't do nothing, right? So what is it that you've done? What is it that you've done to control the situation? And there are things that can be done.
What are kind of the, off the top of your head, what are kind of the easy things that these businesses can do if that's the issue?
If homelessness is, yeah. I mean, first of all, we got to look at the homeless person, right, with some empathy. You gotta understand where they're coming from, and they're gonna gravitate to your area because it's conducive to what they need, right? The environment is conducive. It may be shade, it may be a water source, right? It may be somewhere where they can isolate, right? It may be maybe even criminal opportunities where they can commit crimes. It can be a lot of these different things. So, what can you do besides calling 911 before it's too late or something's already happened? Obviously, you do try to want to engage with them and see what it is that maybe you can help. Maybe you can convince, you can work with property management companies. You can even go as far as implementing trespass warning process. So you have things in place. You got to approach it looking at a lot of different things and not just, okay, I'm going to call the police and that's going to be the end of it, because it won't be the end of it. A lot of the homeless people, their prized possessions is that grocery cart, right? Or that box. And if you're taking those things away and throwing them away, I mean, that's their whole world to them. So to kind of understand who they are, what they are, why they are, is important.
Sorry.
Yep.
A dry throat.
So a lot of it, going back to that, it is assessing the situations and trying to work together. And sometimes direct approaches in a real aloha spirit way, right, works. I've seen that before, So
and sometimes these homeless people are just crazy.
Well, that's true too. Right. And then that's another thing that you got to look at, and then you may need to deal with it in more of a a stronger
What
stronger
do I
way.
do if the homeless person is crapping on the front porch and putting their crap in the key lock of my my office? It's like, well, you might want to call law enforcement.
Right, exactly.
And some cleaners. I don't know.
Right.
But I've heard stories like that where that kind of thing happens. It's like, oh man.
Well, a lot of times that's a good point you bring up, because a lot of times, the homeless people, when they're put in a position where, the police is called right away, and they want to seek some revenge back,
Mm-hmm.
So you try to do all these other steps first. You try to do all this other stuff before calling police. Police is the last resort.
Have you experienced any situations where the business itself had to move for their lack of security for that location?
No, but there's been some places where you've had to take a little more extreme management stuff, where you've actually had to bring in a guard force, or even on a temporary basis, doing trespass warnings, and keeping records of that, and working with the police together, crime reduction units in some cases with the police. I've worked with. So it really depends. It's a whole assessment process, really, is what we're talking about.
Yeah, but security isn't like free. It's not cheap.
No,
Sometimes,
it's not, and I understand that. I think another thing for the audience too. What is really big nowadays is the whole electronic security and technology is really, really big, and there's a lot of really good stuff out there that can substitute for manpower, can substitute for guard forces, and so those are kind of things that I try to educate people on. What are the options and the things out there that can harden your target, right, or your organization,
like putting security cameras and stuff.
Yeah, that's Homeland Security term, right? Kind of harden the target.
Harden the target.
Harden the target, right? It's everything from lighting to locks to doors to access control, video surveillance.
Big dogs.
Could be big dogs.
I remember as a beatman, you would never do a burglary investigation at a house that had a big dog. It's like, well, it's because they avoid big dogs. They just target the house that doesn't have any dogs.
That's right.
Even if the dog doesn't attack them, the dog will be barking and yapping. They just don't want to deal with it.
And they know where the dogs are.
Yeah.
Right.
They just don't want to deal with it.
Right.
It's not a be all end all, I know, but
right.
I love dogs.
Good.
So what is your role with Ola Napua?
Well, basically, as a security consultant, I don't know if Jessica would tell you this story later, but I met her on the airplane coming back from one of my
Yes,
corporate
we're going to
trips.
shout out to Jessica Munoz.
Yeah.
Munoz.
Yeah.
Yeah, she's planning on coming on in December.
Oh, cool. Yeah. So she's the founder and president of Ola Napua, and we're sitting on the airplane one day. She was coming back from a law enforcement conference where she was a guest speaker, and it was a conference that I've been to many times before. So we kind of just really hit it off, started talking. And when she started talking about, well, we're going to go down to Costco and look at some cameras, I looked at her and I said, I got to talk to you.
Not the Costco cameras then?
Not the cameras you need for a special treatment facility with very vulnerable patients, right?
Oh, yes.
So I helped her.
Those are good for your home kind of thing, but not what they were trying to do.
Yeah. So as part of my business, I do planning, design, construction for security systems, and I convinced her that this is a property that we do need to make sure that is very secure with proper access control and video surveillance and proper doors and all of that stuff, front gate area that can't be penetrated, So she brought me on as the consultant, so I consulted on the project, and I just really saw the wonderful things that was happening out there, and she'll tell you the story. It's just amazing. What she and the volunteers and other people of that organization have done. And then the excellent training that they provide to the public, from everything, not only focusing just on sex trafficking, but, things about using the internet and, that's a big thing with kids now,
Yep.
and all of that. So they
Yeah.
just do a wonderful job. So my fell in love with them, and all the flashbacks that I had from the narcotics investigations I did, and just wow, if Ola Napua was around back then, what kind of difference could have been made. So very passionate about this organization.
So can I ask like about sex trafficking? Are children being taken from Hawaii? Are they being brought to Hawaii, or both? Or is Hawaii like a midpoint between the continent and Asia?
Yeah, well, I'll be the first to say I'm not a super expert on it, but if it's anything like prostitution, it's organized crime type involvement, and it might be like real traditional organized crime, or it might be, local groups. Believe it or not, a lot of the points, the major points of sex trafficking occurs in just right in the schools, intermediate, high schools. You got somebody that maybe graduated a year or two before, they come back on campus, they know everyone, they've got involved in sex trafficking activities through some way, shape, or form. And next thing you know, they're inviting girls to parties, they're making them feel good about themselves, and then they get caught up in, so it's recruitment, like that kind of stuff. So I don't know how traditionally organized it is, like actual adult prostitution. Like I know Honolulu at one point was definitely a stopover in the circuit of prostitution, right? But when you have Jessica on and get into that in deep, they can really enlighten your audience about it. But what I do know for a fact is that sex trafficking, in particular with youths, is a really big problem. In particular on the Big Island, it's really big, and throughout our state. So it's a problem that is kind of a hidden problem. It's not talked about a lot, but it's definitely a serious problem.
Why do you think it's not talked about a lot?
I think there's shame for sure, right? It's also kind of real taboo-ish, right? So people are not comfortable talking about it. A lot of this is my own personal, opinions on it, but that's what I think. So that's why groups like Ola Napua and others, they're trying to bring it to the forefront, right? Because it's just kind of, people know that something like this is happening. To what extent, a lot of people don't know. But it's just one of those kind of, we're not comfortable talking about it kind of thing. That's what I think.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's part of that.
No, so I think more attention needs to be brought to stuff like teaching young ladies to look out for their surroundings, and to really question motives when they're being invited to parties and being invited to, older people's homes and stuff like that.
Yeah. Well, I think what's really important too is that the people who are recruiting these girls are so good at it, right? That they can tell when somebody doesn't have a lot of confidence. Someone maybe is depressed. Maybe it is a girl or even a male that's bullied a lot. They're a loner. They don't have a lot of friends. I mean, it's like this profile that they know what to look for, and shopping malls, schools. These are areas that conversation starts with these people who are looking at recruiting.
And I don't know the numbers, but I'd be interested in knowing, because from my own personal experience as a law enforcement officer doing runaway cases, the vast majority are female.
Yeah.
And it's like, why? What? Either are these juvenile females actually running away at a higher rate than the males are, or are the males just not being reported as runaways,
right,
and the females are?
Right.
Kind of
well,
thing.
what I can say, and again, on all the narcotics investigations I did in the past, where we did search warrants and stuff, and we'd find young girls in the drug dealers' homes, right? Sometimes multiples. And, they're 12, 13, 14, 15, 16. And you got to ask yourself, like, why are they here at 2 a.m. during a school night, during the week, right? and then, as part of the process of investigating, we ultimately are going to try to interview and talk to them. And, a lot of them is just, there's parental supervision is missing, right? Self-esteem, or some just plain out addicted, right? So very interesting and seeing that kind of stuff.
So yeah, your 14-year-old kid does not need to be out past 10 o'clock.
Right, exactly.
Past 9 o'clock, let's be honest.
Right.
I got a 14-year-old, and no, he's not going out at night. I'm sorry, he's not.
Right. And upbringing and parental guidance is very big, right?
Part, yeah.
Yeah, obviously. So that's big.
So it's also about educating the parents.
Oh yeah, and Ola Napua does a really, really good job with this, and I'm sure Jessica will talk more about it. But their classes, which I've attended, are really good. I mean, like you're gonna want to get your kids and sit down and watch these, because you're gonna learn so much from it, and you're gonna learn a lot about yourselves.
So these are like preventative measures to take?
Yeah, okay. Online safety stuff, and then right up into, the whole sex trafficking stuff.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, because we talked about, internet crimes and stuff like that a little bit, but my kid was asking to have his own YouTube channel. I was like, okay, but anything you put on is going to have to go through myself and your mother.
Right.
Like before you put anything on, and you're not going to use it as like a chat feature or talking to anybody else. Like, I want him to get into that realm because that is the future. Like going into social media and getting on your phone. I mean, there's no avoiding it. Like as we go further along in the future as a society, we're going to get more digitized. We're going to be on the screens more. There's just, I don't see a way around that.
And just like in security, everything that you pretty much do is there's risks and vulnerabilities to it, right? So you have to be able to identify these things. And before it's too late or before you get into a situation where you can't deal with it, right? So that's part of what, in my business as a consultant, that's what I really try to point out. I'll have a conversation with somebody for 5 or 10 minutes, and I know I've enlightened them. So that's what I really get the pleasure out of in my job right now.
Just enlightening people.
Yeah.
So that they stay safe or safer.
And they can make informed decisions, right? That's really what it comes down to. Yeah. So
where do you see Pax Bello in 10 years?
It's a good question. I mean, I just think I could hopefully be in a point where people are much more informed about the decisions that they have to make about whether it's their own personal safety, their personal awareness, into businesses where people work and they can feel safe and secure, that I had some hand in that, whether it be a piece of paper or a document that was drawn up by myself or an actual class that was done, a process that was put in place to keep people safe, make safer environments. I think there's a role for consultants to do stuff like that. I know there's, like Tracy, for example, she does a really, really good job with consulting on environmental safety stuff. And there's not a lot of us out there. Yeah. But what we're really doing is we're bringing, just like I'm bringing 38, 39 years of experience to people that have no clue, right? And it's good when they listen, and it's good when you can implement some things and create, that's the whole thing, is just creating that safer environment. So
yeah, that's always an interesting conversation that I've found myself having with non-law enforcement people without that experience. When you do have just security type conversations and they're just blown away by what you as a law enforcement experienced professional has experienced, and then implement ideas and advice for them to take, and it's just things that they'd never even thought of because they didn't think that things like that actually happened.
Right. And then, we're in such a world right now where lawsuits are flying all over the place. Geez, people can file lawsuits for just about anything. And, personal or safety, security is kind of really a big part of that. There's always going to be claims of negligence and why didn't you do this and why didn't you prepare for that? And So I play a pretty big role in that, being able to hopefully keep people away from that litigation or civil suits that may occur. So
Yeah, I guess
yeah,
you didn't even think about that, site
yeah,
safety as part of your civil responsibility to your employees.
yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So,
Yeah. Any final words? Anything that you want to bring up before we jet out here?
no, but I mean, it's been I guess I really appreciate that you allow me to kind of express myself. It was really good how you did the icebreakers all the way through, so the audience gets a really good idea. So this is not just kind of from a business focus
Right.
perspective. But I think my final words is really, we are in a position where I think as an individual, business, organizations, that we have to take on more responsibility for our safety and our security, because the police are not going to be there all the time to be able to do that, and particularly in a way that's going to resolve problems, right? They're going to be reactive like they should be, and they're going to handle things as it occurs to the best of their abilities, and to a point where they can take it as far as they can take it. But really it comes down to, do you want to keep your employees safe, right? Do you want to keep yourself safe, right? And just learning how to do that, and educate yourself and be prepared with could be sometimes a cruel world, right?
Yeah.
Yeah,
It's like a constant state of education for yourself and your employees,
right,
and your neighbor businesses too. Because
right,
that could totally happen, where an event happens that affects not only your business but your neighbor business,
yeah,
or affects the neighbor business that you think doesn't affect your business, but it does, or it
right,
will.
right. So again, just that education, learn as much as you can about that kind of stuff, because I think it's going to become more important as time goes on.
Well, good. Well, Ed, I want to say thank you so much for coming on Hawaii Real, and thank you for answering those crazy icebreaker questions.
Yeah.
I'm still thinking about the zombie apocalypse and how we're gonna do all this.
Maybe you can have your own podcast just on that, right?
I probably could.
We call it strategic planning on how to keep the zombies away, right?
I know there's probably somebody out there that has drawn up a whole plan and everything like that for what would happen in the event of a zombie apocalypse. Like, really? That's you got too much time on your hands.
Yeah.
But
right.
no, I mean, thank you so much for appreciating that. I like to get to the person behind the business.
Yeah.
And not just talk about the business, but your passions and who you are, where you're from, so that when people do come and look at your business for potential to be a potential customer for your business, they can see who is the person I'm dealing with.
Right.
Why should I go with this person as opposed to another business or anything like that.
Right, exactly.
So thank you so much for answering these questions.
Appreciate it. Thanks for having me on. It's been a blast, really.
All right. Ed Howard, everybody. And you can find him at paxbellohawaii.com.
Yep.
All right.
Great.
And as always, stay happy, Hawaii. Got 3 shakas. That was like a pinky. What was that? That's the Aia shaka has like 3 fingers standing up.
Really?
Right on.